Fellow Toastmasters, guests, friends, it is my honor today to tell you the story of Juan Pujol Garcia, the spy extraordinaire. The Allies and the Axis gave him awards everywhere. I hope you can forgive me for the occasional poetic interludes, but I am so pumped about this guy's story that poetry simply flows forth naturally from me. This particular fellow is one of two people who is known to have gotten high awards from both the Allies and the Axis in World War II, and he did it by lying to absolutely everybody. If you are interested in things like honesty, integrity, and working hard, then now would be a great time for a potty break, because you're not going to get any of that, folks. This is the story of how to spy your way into history. And it begins in Spain in the mid-1930s during the Spanish Civil War. During this time, Juan Garcia was a young man and found himself rather reluctantly on both sides of the conflict, variously on and off. That's not usually what happens in wars, civil or otherwise, and it gave him a strong distaste for being a soldier. He also learned through this experience that he really hated fascism with a deep passion. So, several years later, when he saw fascism on the rise in Nazi Germany and in Italy, he decided he wasn't going to stand for it. He was going to do whatever he could do as a non-soldier to stop it from coming into Spain. So he decided he was going to become a spy. He walked into the British embassy and offered his services as a spy. They said no. He would not be stopped quite so easily, so he offered his services a second time. They said no. Well, he was indefatigable. He walked back in a third time, sure that they would have such a motivated individual. They didn't. They said no. Now, anybody else at this point probably would have given up, but not Juan Pujol Garcia, the man of many faces, who spied and lied and then did hide his plans in many places. If the British wouldn't have him, surely the Nazis would. He walked all the way over to the Nazi embassy in Spain and asked if they wanted to have somebody spy for them. Now, the Nazis, of course, wanted to get into Spain, so they said, yes, he would love to have a man on the inside. They gave him about $500 and instructions to pack up all of his stuff and move to London, where he would begin to report on the various goings-on around England. And that's exactly what he did. Except the part about London. He flubbed that a little bit and went to Lisbon instead. Now, you can be forgiven for not being familiar with your English geography, so I will let you all in on a little bit here. Lisbon is a very pleasant town, well renowned for not being in England. It's located in Portugal, a rather large distance away, and was not where the Nazis expected him to be. During this time, he got himself a library card and checked out numerous almanacs and travel guides on the subject of what the weather is like in London, what the travel is like in London. He reported all of this back to the Nazis, who were impressed by how authentic and reliable his information was. Once they started to trust him, they asked him for more and more, so he began to develop a more extensive network of spies who was helping him find information about the British. All of them were puppets that he controlled. None of them was a real person ever at any point in time. Eventually, after about a year of this, he walked into the American embassy and told them, hi, I'm the guy who's been selling British information that I just made up to the Nazis. This whole thing is a farce, and it's great. Do you want me now? Well, by this time, the British had finally caught wind of Mr. Garcia and the many faces he wore and decided, yes, as a matter of fact, why don't we move you up to London for real this time? He made his way up to London and began the process of selling even more disinformation to the Nazis. But this time, it was disinformation that the British specifically wanted them to get. A very qualitative and important step above what he had been doing up to that point. As the war escalated, and as the Americans were beginning to draw nearer and nearer to their mounting invasion, things were getting very dicey, and the misinformation became more and more important, finally culminating in what may have been the most important project of misinformation in World War II, which was D-Day. And it was without a doubt the most important project in the life of Juan Pujol Garcia, who had the Nazis in his sway. Their tanks were not at Normandy, they were in fact at Pas de Calais. Now, you can be forgiven for not knowing your French geography either. I know you all had a hard time with the Portuguese geography, so I'll let you in on a little bit about Pas de Calais. It is a wonderful region in northern France, which is as close to England as you can get without actually going to England. It's roughly 20 miles away across the English Channel, and it's great for if you're in the mood for a 3-hour boat tour, or storming the beaches with your personnel and armored tanks, or if you're really feeling spicy and want to add a little zip to your day, you could try swimming the English Channel. If you did that, you would probably wind up in Pas de Calais. That's how close it is. That's why, when D-Day was upon them, the Allies wanted to make sure that the Germans knew they were landing at Pas de Calais, which, as you may all remember from your history, is not where they landed. They landed in Normandy with all of their tanks and artillery and manpower that they had. However, the disinformation campaign was so broadly successful that the Germans had moved a large squadron of tanks over to Pas de Calais and not Normandy. Months after D-Day was completed, the tanks still had not moved over to the action because the Germans were very worried, and they had it on good authority, mind you, that the attack was really going to come at Pas de Calais, about 100 miles from where Normandy actually was. It never did, and by the time the war was over, those tanks were shown to be completely misplaced. It was such a successful campaign that at the end of the war, Juan Garcia was awarded the most honorable, I always get this wrong, I think it was called the Most Honorable Excellence Society Award by the British. That's going to be the one fact that I get wrong. Oh well, it was a really big award. He was very proud of it. He was also awarded the Iron Cross by the Nazis, which at that time was a award that required Hitler's personal stamp of approval to be given out. And that is what you have to do if you want to get high honors from both the Axis and the Allies. As I think about this story, I sometimes think that there are a few different ways that we might read this. I see in Juan Pujol Garcia's story the notion that perhaps sometimes we should lie in order to get what we want for the greater good, and sometimes I see in it tenacity and gumption and stick-to-itiveness, but I think the point that I can always find my way to, and I think which we all can, is this. Juan Pujol Garcia, the man who we like a lot, when a Nazi asks you to do something, say you will do, and then do not. Mr. Toastmaster.